Hey guys, welcome back to the At Length Pod. It's your girl Carter Mia Lisa, and you already know, or you're about to find out, that we stay with wonderful guests. So I'm gonna go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sasha. I'm a project manager at Google, and I'm just so happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Sasha, for making the time to come on the podcast. We're excited to jump into these questions. So I want to start with where you're from. Are you from New York, Mount Vernon, Harlem, somewhere else?
I am New York born and raised. I was born in the Bronx and then moved to Mount Vernon, and I now currently live in Harlem. I've lived in New York my whole life.
People know New York is the best state, so that's that on that. Do you want to live outside of New York at any point?
You know, so I've gotten advice from friends and also my therapist that it would be a great point of growth to explore living in another area. And also, as I think about starting a family, having a family, it might be interesting to raise a family somewhere else other than New York, but we'll see.
Well, I know how that can be trying to figure out to stay or to go because there is no place like home. But sometimes you got to spread your wings and fly. So, you said you're a project manager for Google. Can you elaborate more on what that is and what you do?
Um, so I keep the engine running. We have where my teams work on a wide variety of projects, and I help to keep them all on track within budget. I keep all the players informed of things that are happening with the projects, and I see it to from conception to finish. So I see it from the beginning to the end.
And do you travel at all for work?
I do, or let's say I used to, because some of my role actually there's a little bit of event planning in it as well. So I do travel for events that I do for work.
And how do you balance traveling for work, or how did you balance traveling for work?
Um, I made it fun. I always tacked on something fun to do on a work trip. So, work hard, play hard. I also made sure that I was playing when I was working.
Well, that's smart. Plus, traveling for work probably opened up some viewpoints of different places. So, if you are going to venture out somewhere else, at least now you experienced it.
Yes.
So, how did you end up at Google? Was it something that was always on your trajectory that you always wanted, or how did that come about?
No, actually, went from, I started off my career in healthcare and went from
Mm-hmm.
there to working at what do you call it? Why am I blanking on the word? A charter school. A charter
Mm.
school for a year. And after a year in the charter school, I just wanted something new, something fresh. And so I got online and applied to some jobs, and Google came back saying that they wanted me. So I went to Google.
And how was the charter school? What made you want to leave there and transition to Google?
There were some changes that were being made at the school that I knew was going to negatively impact me. And I just
Mm.
didn't sign up for that. So I was trying to get out of what to me looked like it was going to be a bad situation. So it was kind of course correcting my career.
Smart move. Sometimes you got to go ahead, take a risk, and just go for it. What was the process like onboarding with Google?
Oh, onboarding at Google is tough. It's a humongous organization, very complex, so many different players. We say it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're just constantly, yeah, it's constantly getting bombarded with new information, bombarded with new faces, bombarded with new names. And it's alphabet soup. There's so many acronyms for everything. So there's a quite steep of a learning curve.
And when you transitioned to them, do you feel like you were well prepared? Were you worried at all? Was it a long process before you started?
The interview process was very long for sure. But you know, the one of the things at Google that we say you have to know how to do is thrive in ambiguous situations. And they screen very well for people's ability to do that. So, I mean, as overwhelming as it is, there were some kind faces, some friendly people along the way who took me under their wing and showed me around, and I was able to eventually make a smooth transition.
At least you were well prepared. So, diving back more into your specific role, does it have to do with maybe digital marketing at all, like the SEO, SEM side of things? You said you're the oil that keeps the machine running.
Yes. So the projects I work on are actually in the ad space, in ad sales. So all of those things you just mentioned are, we touch on them, but they're not fully in our bucket. We work with
Mm,
agencies. We work with the agencies that sell the ads, and so that's where the projects are happening.
got it. So, you're behind the scenes, but at the forefront all in one time. So, when running a campaign, is it difficult for a small company in comparison or in competition with, maybe a larger corporation? Is it even worth it for a small company to run a campaign?
Run an advertising campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It's about knowing your market, and we help our clients know their market and land their content, their advertising content with their consumers. So
Mm-hmm.
while obviously the bigger companies have the larger bucks to have a wider reach, um, small companies are still able to target their consumers using some of our tools.
And so you handle the ad side of things, and obviously that would encompass a lot of different people. Do you work directly with the engineering team, or no? They're far removed from what you do.
The engineering team is far removed from what I do. The closest I get to that is with the product teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're the closest I get, but yeah, engineering, it's like the other side of the globe.
They do their own thing. Do you provide the budget for the marketing team when they're preparing campaigns, or is that also separate from sales?
So I don't provide budgets for marketing campaigns, but I will provide budgets or prepare budgets for a project. The budget is comes down to the client and our agency partners. They come up with the budget. I stay away from that.
I can imagine. I would want to stay away from that too, but numbers aren't my strong suit. So that's that on that. So we were fortunate to have had a conversation previously where we, touched on being from the same private school. And we spoke on how they were trying to handle some things pertaining to diversity and the experience that, minority students are having. Do you feel as though they're doing a good job handling that?
You know what? As time has gone on, I think they have done been doing a better job,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the stories that I saw and heard were absolutely heartbreaking and enraging. The fact that that could happen at a school that prides itself on nurturing young minds, nurturing
Mm-hmm.
young bodies, nurturing young souls, to allow them to be in the line of such violence. Um,
Mm.
I think I would have liked to have seen some of the faculty that was accused of doing some of the things that were said. I would have liked to see some of them go. That would have been that would have been good for me. But it seems like there's some changes coming down the pike anyway. So looks like I think the school's future is bright.
Well, high hopes. Yeah, the experience at that particular school can go either way depending on, the preparation that goes into it. Since we're on the topic of diversity, what does diversity look like to you? Some people say it's just a specific person of a specific race in a specific place, but is that what it looks like to you?
When I think of diversity and what the diversity I want to see, I think of diversity of thought. It's not necessarily always just what people look like. It's how they think and what they're bringing to the table. Of course, we think of diversity in terms of the way people look because of how underrepresented people have been shut out of certain markets and certain spaces. But true diversity, the true vision for diversity is diversity of thought. When we get to the place where we're not looking at this color of people's skin, we're not looking at their creed, their religion, we're looking at what they think and how they think and what they do. I think that's true diversity.
And, there's a saying, everyone having a seat at the table, right? What do you feel like is the power behind everyone having a seat at the table?
Yeah. And to piggyback on what I just said, people's backgrounds are important because they influence the way that they think. Everyone having a seat at the table means that there are going to be more voices. More people will be heard. We'll be hearing more ideas, rich ideas. And from all of these ideas, we can come up with solutions for some of our most complex problems. And I think that that's very exciting, making sure that as many people as we can have a seat at the table.
So if everyone has a seat at the table, does that now mean that everyone can say anything and ask anything since they're at the table?
I think when we get to this place, hopefully respect is going to be a key value. And as long as we keep respect, at the forefront, you can obviously not ask anything and not say anything because you're being thoughtful and you're trying to bring thoughtful, positive, forward thinking solutions to the table. You're not trying to put people down. You're not trying to get over on people. So I don't think you can say anything and ask anything, but I think that if you are guided by respect, that won't even be a problem for you.
On the same lines of, asking anything, saying anything, you mentioned it being respectful, but in big corporations, I can imagine at Google especially, but just in corporate America in general, misunderstandings can happen very easily. But sometimes people are genuinely just curious, right? They may have never seen something before or never experienced something before. So they feel like, oh, I can just ask. I've never seen a person be able to change their hairstyle every couple of days. So I want to know more about your hair. At what point, where does the boundary lie? When is it okay and not okay? How do you remain respectful in instances like that?
I think that the boundary lies with each individual. Each individual decides what they will answer and what they won't. For me, I don't want to talk to a white man about my hair. That's just me. But there are Black women who are more than happy to. So I think that and it's good for them. Good for them. I don't have it. But I think it comes down to what each individual decides is their line in the sand. And I think the person asking the question, all right, curiosity is a thing, and it's generally a good thing. But when someone says, actually, I don't want to talk about that boundary is respected. You respect the boundary and you move on with the conversation.
So ask, but if I say no, respect my answer and let that be.
Please let it be and let's move on.
Do you think that sometimes people have a hard time just at the thought of being asked about something, right? Like maybe their hair or their style or their heritage because maybe they eat a certain type of meal for lunch? Do you think that they're not even open to being asked a question?
I think I think some people aren't, for sure. I think some people, that's their personal business, so they don't want to share. And
Mm-hmm.
I think other people are an open book, and they're happy to share, you know, everything they do. I mean, we see it on social media. There are people who share literally almost everything they do. So I think, again, it comes down to the individual.
You said it best. So you went from working in healthcare to a charter school to then Google. And I know you said you transitioned from the charter school because you didn't like the direction it was going. But why Google?
Why Google? Google is a place that you can learn and you can grow. There are a lot of opportunities there. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna keep it real. The money was good,
Dollar dollar bill, y'all.
and also the name recognition for for the rest of my career. So should I leave Google, I have that on my resume. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was it was truly a great opportunity for me.
That's so dope. I love that. You took a risk, and a smart one. And it's playing out well for you. What have you learned the most after being a part of a renowned company like Google?
I've learned the power of listening,
Mm.
that you come to these meetings and you have your ideas, and you should definitely always make sure you get them out. But I tell you, people, sometimes there is beauty at what happens at the intersection of people's ideas. Maybe I thought
Mm-hmm.
I had the full idea, but my partner, you had the other half, and I didn't even know it. And this
Mm-hmm.
person over here had this other part that we didn't realize. I love the coming together of ideas in the work. And I think what I love about Google is that we have so much cross functional. The work is so cross functional that we get to work with so many different people that you really get to hear and learn all of these rich ideas and rich perspectives. It's never dull. It's always something new, and I think that's exciting.
Do you feel like they're doing a good job with diversity at Google, being that you work with so many different people that have so many different ideas?
So diversity at Google, I would say they could do better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are below the mark when it comes to their black employees, the number of black employees that they have employed, um, and they could do better. They can do better with their recruiting. They could be do much better with their retention. The thing is that they can get people in the door, but they don't always stay, because
Mm.
for some people in some areas of Google, it's not a very hospitable place. Google could do a better job recruiting black talent, and then also retaining black talent.
Mm.
Um, there are we have serious issues with attrition, and I think if we did more to fix our internal culture,
Mm.
and this is what I'm talking about, with valuing actual diversity of thought. you the black body in the chair is not enough. You have to value
Yeah.
that person's mind, value their perspective. And I think when that doesn't happen, when people aren't valued, they yes, they got in the door, but they're not being shown any respect. They're not being
Mm-hmm.
valued. They leave. So diversity has to go beyond skin color. Yes, more black bodies, but when they get there, you better value them. You better appreciate them, and listen to what they have to say, because they have great ideas. Great ideas.
For real. And I feel like to your point as well, that we as a community also need to value our own voices and just begin, you took the risk to get there, right? But also take the risk to say what needs to be said, even if you feel like if you speak, no one will hear you, because you never know who will actually hear you if you just say something. So we were previously talking about, like a seat at the table, right? You said it's not just good enough to have someone at the table. So when you get that seat at the table, you got to make sure it's worth your time being there, right? Because leaving from one to the other may not even really do anything. And you're just going from one company that doesn't value you to another one that doesn't value you, right? So I think it would be really great to see us as a whole begin to just get confidence, or, push confidence towards each other, to allow, for us to not look for someone to say, okay, I hear you, or I'm listening to you, and just start speaking, right? Because we need more of that. But I definitely agree with what you were saying wholeheartedly. What do you feel like prepared you to be in a leadership role?
I think, I would say my entire life, from our private school to my college to my time in healthcare, and then definitely the time in the school. I think my entire life kind of gave me the tools I needed, and I think the biggest lesson that I have learned is to respect people. If you respect goes a long way. Whether you're a leader, and I'm technically in a leader support role, so I lead in some ways but support in others. Um, if you, as a leader, doesn't matter, you need to respect your people. It goes a long way.
Right. When you hear about the greatest leaders, it's always the ones that listen, not just the ones that talk or guide or, take 100% control. They're able to reel everything in when necessary, but also take feedback as well. So I agree 100%. So are you a faith-based person?
Yes, I am a Christian and I love Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior. Um, I My faith is at the center of everything that I do. I don't know about you, but it it guides me.
My mom was the holy roller of all holy rollers, okay? So, I mean, I went through my rough patch with the good Lord, but I'm rooted in it. So, I get up every morning at like 5:30 a.m. and pray. No lie. So, yeah, I mean, I'll go back to sleep after that, though. I'm not going to hold you. I don't stay up. But definitely, do you feel like you're able to balance your faith with, being a part of a company so big that probably pulls you every which way so often?
I would say that my faith helps me navigate Google. When things get difficult, when things get complex, I know that I can just call on Jesus and that He will guide me. I'm telling you, I've been in some meetings and just not knowing what's happening, or having at work, and I'm not in there talking about hallelujah, thank you Jesus, but I'm in my heart. I will call on Jesus, and He answers.
Asking you shall receive.
Exactly.
Definitely. It's always important to be rooted in something. You have to know what you stand for. Like they say, you'll fall for anything. And you never know when you need something to hold on to when you're not as prepared as you normally would be, or, you're having a rough day, or you've never had to work on something like this before. At Google, do you feel like you've been exposed to, more like technology than you would have been if you worked somewhere else?
That's actually a very interesting question. Um, I've definitely been exposed to technology, but honestly, so much of it I don't even understand. So it's like, you know, but there is a lot of technology that goes into the work that I some of the work that I manage.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing how artificial intelligence works in the ad space and like targeting consumers, measure in the measurement space. It's really interesting. So yes, in some ways, I've been exposed to technology in ways that I would not have elsewhere.
Well, that's a plus and a bonus. With artificial intelligence on the rise and, so many different equipments that the company has and probably is creating throughout the building, or well, now a lot of stuff is from home, but just in general, do you feel like they're always listening to you, or do you feel pretty safe when you're doing your work?
I don't think they're listening to me. I don't think they have enough um, manpower, or AI hasn't gotten that good yet that they're able to listen and to everybody. They just don't have enough time.
A lot of people are afraid that, AI is coming to take over the world. How do you feel about it?
I don't. I think that thankfully there's some really great people who are working in the ethics of AI and are
Mm.
ensuring that all of the AI that is being done, like maybe not all of it, but as much of it as possible, is as ethical as possible. So AI is not something that I'm personally afraid of, although I know
Mm-hmm.
that it does have it could have the potential to go left. But these fierce people who are working to make sure that AI is equitable and ethical, and just that it will bring positive solutions, not negative solutions to our society.
Well, that's a positive perspective to have on it. I mean, I guess we won't know until we know when it comes to that. So I'm just here like, all right, well, when it happens, it happens. Or when it happens more, I guess, because it's already happening. Sometimes people are afraid to take risks. They don't know where to start. They're worried. They're just really reserved. What advice would you have for someone that is put in a position maybe similar to the one you had, where they can see things kind of going in a direction that they're not really fond of, but they're afraid to take a risk, or they don't know where to start to be able to take that leap of faith?
I would say the best place to start is to really just believe in yourself. Believe that you can make the change for yourself, because once you believe that, you will be able to do that for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. I also believe in taking smart risks. So don't go sell off all of your belongings and buy all the tickets for the lottery. You know, um, do your research. Do you know where you want to go? Do you know who you want to be? What's the way to get there? Talk to people who have done it before. Talk to people who are in, maybe not even in the same field that you want to go into, but in similar fields, and or at levels that you would like to reach one day. So maybe someone who's a director in a certain company, go talk to them, figure out how they did it, and then take all of that information and go back and look at where you are and what the options are for you, and try to see if you can carve out a path for yourself.
You said it best yet again. So we went to the same private school, and we spoke about, private school students and the things that are going on there right now. Do you feel like you benefited from the private school experience?
Without a doubt, I've definitely benefited from the private school experience. Um, you know, I learned so much at that school. I think the biggest thing I learned there was critical thinking skills
Mm.
and how to think critically as a individual. So I would, honestly, as with all the crazy things going on, I would still think of sending my child there, just because of how rich and nurturing the education was for me.
Mm. Yeah, for me, I learned how I learn. And that seems so weird, right? But we had a whole like auditorium assembly about, the different types of learners people can be. But you said for you it was critical thinking that really impacted you. Can you elaborate and explain exactly what critical thinking is and how that impacted you?
Okay. Critical thinking is the ability to assess one's environment, assess ideas to see how they fit in with each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
trying to see what works best. And right when I think of myself as a critical thinker for myself, I'm able to look at options in front of me and figure out what works best for me. I'm able to critique. It's about critiquing. It's being able to take a deep look to kind of weed out the bad choices and only
Mm-hmm.
surface the good ones. Or surface the good ones and surface the bad ones, but know the distinction between the two. Um, so I think it's about thinking deeply and thinking with discernment.
I like that. Thinking with discernment. Yeah. What would you say, besides critical thinking, were some pros? And what would you say were some cons of your time at private school?
Well, one of the pros that I would say was the music program. We had a great music program that I was a part of,
Mm-hmm.
and I sang a lot there, and I did music theory, and I benefited greatly from those programs. One negative, one con, I think, was just the the racism. I'll call it racism.
Mm.
The kids who didn't really want to talk to you, didn't really want to bother with you because you were black and poor, and who treated you a certain type of way because you were black and poor. As much as the school was all about respecting each other, sometimes that didn't happen on the ground, and there was a lot of disrespect, I think. But as much as that is a con, it was also, I'm gonna say, it's a positive thing though, because
Mm-hmm.
that's life, right? That's life. That's
Yeah.
how people teach you in life. So I was able to learn early how to handle those things.
One thing that the school definitely says is that they are preparing you for life. And if nothing else, good, bad, or indifferent, you really learn how to handle yourself in a room full of people that don't like you, and but also in a room potentially full of people that want something from you, right? But you touched on two major things. You touched on your experience with music, and you also, he touched on your experience just with the environment. So how did music affect, your thought process and impact you, and why was it so beneficial to you that you had like music theory and everything?
Um, well, it was beneficial to me because it was an outlet for my expression, my feelings, my thoughts, and a safe outlet, right?
Mm.
Some people like to write to express themselves, and I also did write to express myself as well. We all had to, but the also the curriculum was so rich that I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much about myself through the music program. I learned. You said you learned you learned how to learn. I
Yeah.
learned how to learn through music as well. The way that the music was presented to me, the way that it was broken down for me, taught me that that's how I learned best, and I was able to
Mm.
replicate that for myself and other subject areas. So music was my saving grace.
Private school can be really tricky, right? You said if you become a parent or when you become a parent that you would still consider sending your child there. I am a parent and I have made the choice to send my child there, right? Or to a private school. But I didn't necessarily have like the sweetest time at the school, right? And it wasn't just my time at the school, but it also was my time at home. And when I say at home, I mean like in my community with my original friends, the people I knew first, my family members, you know. I got picked on for saying certain words more often because I had become a part of that environment. I got picked on for using bigger words and things of that nature. Did you have a similar experience to where you kind of didn't or did turn off one before going to the other?
Yes, definitely. I learned to code switch very quickly, because yeah, same thing like you said. If I spoke the way I spoke at the school
Mm-hmm.
in places in my home, I would get ridiculed for it. If I spoke the way I would, and not really my home, really more like my friend group outside of school. But
Mm-hmm.
if I spoke like my friend group outside of school, at school, I would get, I'd be considered that the the ghetto chick,
Yeah.
and yeah, and whatever that is, what does it even mean to be the ghetto chick? Who knows? But having that connotation would result in negative things in my school environment. So I code switched. I talked like I need to talk at private school. And when I was with my friends, I talked the way I need to talk with my friends. And I
Mm-hmm.
just went between the two. And I found that, and I find that I still do that. At work, I
Mm.
still code switch. And as you were saying, the school prepares you for life. I think that I learned how to code switch from my school, from our school. And I think it's and as much as code switching, people will say that it might be a bad thing. You shouldn't code switch. You should be authentic to who you are. I personally believe that you need to know how to navigate different spaces, and different spaces call for different things depending on who you are. And if you're the kind of person who can go back and forth, then do that. Be true to you by going back and forth, because the back and forth creates a boundary. This is like so back in the day, back at school, this is school and this is friends. Like that's the
Mm.
boundary, and they're not mixing. Um, and that's how I am at work. This is work and this is Sasha. Without
do
mixing.
you feel like do you feel like code switching does potentially negatively affect communities like the black community because we're allowing, we'll say, other races, but more specifically Caucasians, right, to see a version of us that makes them expect every other black person to be just like us, and that is why they end up being afraid or intimidated or haphazard when they encounter the authentic version of us because they're expecting everyone to be able to code switch, and when they don't, that's how we end up in, senseless violence.
I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective. I think I don't think that that's how it really works, because I know of people who don't who make a choice not to code switch, and they are received very well by white people. I don't think it's my job to show white people, listen, I can talk these two ways, so you know that that I'm that this other black person here. Well, actually, that's not true. Let me back that up, because because I wear these nails, and these nails could be considered yeah, unprofessional, but I wear them because first of all, because I like them, and second of all, it's also like, just if you think of me as a good black person, maybe the next time you see another black woman or black person with these nails, you will think twice about judging them as somebody who is below you.
Mm.
So you do have a point there that code switching can possibly negatively impact the black community. But I do believe that every individual has to make a choice to show up authentically in the way that they're going to show up. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to code switch. That's just who I am. I'm going to have my nails, but I'm going to code switch.
And to each his own. What works for you, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
So, staying on the topic of just the experience, between private school and us both being people from, a very different background than the children that predominantly fill the private school, right? I have been told at times that I thought I was better than because I was basically using my vocabulary words. Would you say that it's true that I was acting better than somebody by just using, bigger words because I was learning them, and applying them? Or is it just me living in my truth and applying the knowledge and potentially exposing them to something new and they were just uncomfortable, but could have potentially benefited from me not withholding, the knowledge that I gained?
That's a good question. You know what? To me, for that kind of stuff, it comes down to the intent,
Mm-hmm.
because this is one of the areas where in which I think code switching does work really well. If you know that language is going to be a barrier, if people are not going to understand what you're saying, the whole point of communicating is for people to understand what you're saying. So if you're using big words and knowing that people are not going to understand you, I think that that is problematic for me, because your intent is not for them to understand you. It's for you to be able to use your big words. Now, if you're just speaking the way you speak because that's how you speak, and they get offended, that's a different thing to me.
Yeah.
So that's different. And but I think as the person who is able to speak on both planes, I think if that were to happen, you then try to find a way to communicate with that person so they understand you. So if you say the big word, fine, you said the big word, but they didn't understand what that word meant. Now it's your job to define what that word means and
Mm-hmm.
help them understand you. Does that make sense?
Of course, because I definitely started code switching after that. I was like, no, I'm not gonna lose my friends over no word, especially not no vocabulary word that I don't care about anyway. So it definitely makes perfect sense. Do you feel like the friends you had made at school were hesitant to come visit your home, or that you were hesitant to have them at home, and vice versa? Or like that they would prefer you to come to their home because of the community that you came from?
So fun fact, I'm also Jamaican. So my mom said no homes. Nobody went to anybody's home. Nobody came to my home. I didn't go to their home.
Mm.
So I didn't, I got invited, but my mom never allowed me to go over people's house because, she believed that maybe they would put some magic on me. So that,
Then I'm not, or not that I know of, I'm not Jamaican. I wish I was, but I'm not. I'm not. But my mom wasn't with it either. She was really like, no, no sleepovers. They can't come over here. You got siblings, play with them. Go in the backyard. The gate. I better not hear the gate open, and that's that. So I completely understand. Would you view private school as a microcosm of society, being that the majority of the lower class is black at the school, and the majority of the upper class and the majority of the student body is white at the school?
um, in so so no, because if it was a true microcosm, the majority of the class would have been poor. So white or black would be poor. So to me, it is some semblance of society in that the whites were rich and the generally the blacks were not as rich. But I think, um, yeah, it would have to have been more poor kids in general, and there were so few. Well, I'm not going to call you poor, but in
Middle
comparison to
class,
them,
at the time.
I mean, yes, I was middle class, but compared to them, I was practically poor. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah,
So when I went to the school, I had no idea what the school really was, right? I was presented it based off of me and my brother always being in the same facility, right? And that's how they kind of wooed me into going. I didn't know what I was taking the test for. I had never really been around nothing but white people, and the white people that I did encounter were a lot like me in the way that they talked or dressed and everything like that, right? And I've seen cases where people had great experiences at private school, and most of it was because they were either introduced to it really early or they were exposed, and although they were young, they were told the truth about what they were about to experience. And in other instances, they kind of just had no idea. They were told that they were going to be going to a new school, told to take this test, and parents like mine, they not playing that. Like, you better do your best, and that's just that, right? So do you feel like it would be beneficial to equip a child to know what they're about to experience, and to kind of help them build that protective like gear for themselves, to be like, okay, like, look, people might ask you about this, people might say this to you, people might use this type of language, but X, Y, and Z, and now you can just look for the best in this to help better prepare you, like you said, for the real world, where you understand sometimes you just have to code switch and sometimes you don't, or sometimes you just have to kind of ignore things rather than giving it energy. Do you think that would be beneficial?
yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. I think that preparation is good, and I think it might be hard for a child to even understand, just even if it was explained to them what they were going to experience going to a private school, coming,
Mm-hmm.
and from our perspective, going to as a black person to this affluent white space.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think, but one of the things I think you said that was really important is not only do you tell them, but you also you support them as they go through it. And I think that needs to that's the key, because I don't think the child's going to fully understand what's happening as until it starts to happen. So yeah, that support. Do they have that? Um,
um so prior to this school year, there were still students basically that said that there was no real support for them, on top of just their parents kind of saying things similar to what I would have experienced, which is, you're fortunate to have this opportunity, don't blow it. So do what you got to do to get through it. But that's that. And they didn't really like listen to them. But what I can say is now, all the way down to pre-K, they have a program for the minority students, predominantly black, to be able to kind of have a safe space to go to if they went through anything, so that it doesn't just fall on the one teacher that you might have happened to bump into and actually connected with, right? They also are making more strides to be conscious of who the teachers are for those students, so that, because they switch classes, so they try to make sure that they do see a variety of teachers versus just all white teachers. So they are now actively making an effort to change. It's not fully resolved yet, but they are making an effort, and that counts for something, right? At some point, we have to just be thankful for what we get, and just keep applying the pressure for it to get to the best possible space for our lifetime. So that's what they're doing.
Thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
Of course, anytime. I like to be transparent, because it's always important, and I'm realistic, right? The reality is a lot of what we go through as Black people, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it did, but it didn't, right? So they did things to us for years and years and years, and we conformed to it because we felt like we didn't have a choice, or we were too afraid, or we're so, out of nowhere. And then we taught that. And so for generations, that's what we knew. And then we slowly started pushing back, right? So the change is not going to happen overnight. And I think that sometimes as Black people, we expect for the change to happen overnight, right? Yeah, it's cool to do this thing, but the reality is it's not going to be fixed overnight. Just because you win one battle doesn't mean you won the war. And a war is not won by one battle, but a multitude of battles. So it's good to be honest about that, and forthcoming. So I try to do that. There used to be a program, or there is a program called YouTube Black. And I just wanted to know, like, are they making active strides to bring that back? Is that kind of by the wayside? And how does that work?
I meant to get that answer for you. As far as I know, they will be bringing it back. I think it happened in the fall, right?
They really kind of low-key only really did it one time. So it was definitely like fall, winter-ish time frame versus like spring, summer. And the way it came about was it was just like promoted all over YouTube. Like how when Google does like a Black History Month tag. And it was, they gathered some Black content creators and they put them on, like they did like a convention. And then the idea was, a lot of Black content creators were shedding light on the fact that they weren't getting basically the same treatment or push as the white content creators were. And so the idea was they were going to kind of help that, like, level the playing field.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to touch base on that for those who didn't know that, YouTube and Google are a thing, or, what they might be working on,
I know
if there was... go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. No, you go.
Oh, the side of YouTube Black that I know of is where they had them engage with our clients. So they had prominent Black YouTube creators engage with our clients in Washington, D.C., I believe in 2019. But yeah.
Well, I hope they bring it back. It was really dope to see it.
I hope so too. If you say so, I hope it comes back.
It was just great. It's always great to see those type of incentives. Talking on the Black community, what is something that you would like to give back to your community?
Something I would like to give back to my community. What I want to give back to my community is two things. Financial literacy, as I'm still learning myself about finances. But financial literacy, I wanted to teach young people about how to save, how to budget, how to, save for milestones in life, like buying a home or investing. And then another thing I want to give back to my community is love. I want to give them love, and love through the form of music and food and parties and, like, our culture. I want to engage with people in that way. and just love upon them.
So you mentioned, well, I love the love part. Callie would love that too. That's my daughter. She's all about love. But you mentioned financial literacy. What does financial literacy look like to you, and what does that really mean?
Financial literacy looks like understanding your finances, understanding what finances are, what your options are, how to be the best steward of your financial resources. And there's so many things out here like an IRA or 401k, HSA, all of these various things that one could use to help build your wealth, making sure that people understand what those resources are, what those tools are, and how best to use them so that they can make the best choices for themselves.
I feel like we could definitely use that. It would be extremely beneficial for the community. A lot of us don't know about those things and how important, like a savings is, what a savings means, what does that look like, how to invest. When you come into money, what does that really mean, right? People think, you make a meal and you touch a meal, but really, there's a lot that goes into that. So it's something that we as a community could really benefit from. And with the way the world is moving, especially like with Google offering, courses online and everything like that, it would be great to see something like that be presented to the community. How difficult would you say it is for someone that looks like us, but that went to private school to get into a company like Google? I'm sorry, but didn't go to a private school to get into a company like Google?
I think they would have an equal shot. I mean, it's what it boils down to is, does your experience match the role that they're looking for you to fill? So private school is great, but what have you been doing since then? Has the work that you've been doing, does it match the needs of Google? So yeah, I think they would have the same chances as anybody.
And I just recently did, or not too long ago, wasn't that recent now, but I did an online course that was free on Google Garage for digital marketing. Do you feel like someone without a college degree, but maybe with certifications, has a shot at a company like Google?
Yes. Google has, I know somebody who works at Google who does not have a college degree. Again, it's that your experiences match
The
the
job
need
that you're going for.
yeah.
That's why you gotta shoot your shot, people. You gotta just take a chance, take that leap of faith, go ahead and do what you gotta do.
Never know. You never know.
You never know. So I have to ask this on record: does Google really have nap pods, and do you use them?
Yes, and I have used a nap pod or two. Um, yeah, they're just you just need a little like a little refresher nap in the middle of the day.
Does it really help?
It does, especially sometimes like sometimes when like if I have a headache, sometimes I'll have a headache and I need to take a nap to just kind of like relieve some pressure on my system. And I wake up and I feel better, or I'm stuck with a work problem and my mind doesn't know where else to go. And I take a nap and I wake up feeling refreshed, and all of a sudden I have all these ideas.
I think that's so innovative that they do that, right? Because most companies, they put so much pressure on their employees. And don't get me wrong, deadlines are necessary, right? And time management is extremely important. But like you said, you might be stuck on something. You might have a headache. Things that sometimes you just need to step away from, right? And if companies just kind of loosen the reins a little bit on their employees, they would see a lot more productivity, even in their best employees, you know? So shout outs to Google for legitimately having the nap pod. So before we go into our rapid wrap up questions, I wanted to ask you, schools, sometimes they don't back their students, and sometimes parents don't back their children, right? And I mean that in regards to a kid can very clearly be intrigued or showing talent in something like the arts or tech, right? But because there is a stigma or a stereotype attached to their race or heritage or however you would like to prefer to call it, they push that child to that thing. For example, a young black male student, right? The idea is you're black, you're an athlete, right? How do you think we can push the narrative forward where they see a child actually doing something? Because kids don't know, right? They don't realize that if they're really into typing certain things on their computer, that's coding. They don't realize that, oh, if they're writing a lot, that, you know, that might be poetry, or maybe they could write a book or a screenplay. They don't know that. How can we push that narrative forward where we're breaking off the stereotypes to help these kids, our future, really be pushed in the direction of their passion versus their stereotype?
Yeah, yeah. It's awful when it happens. I think, the best schools and the best parents allow this is what I think, allow their kids to have a diverse array of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so yes, you get to do some sports, you get to do some coding, you get to do some writing, some music, some language. You get to do a little bit of everything, and allows the kid a chance to see what's out there and then decide for themselves what's best for them. I mean, I think some kids don't aren't able to decide for that, like they don't have a clear passion, and so then that's when the parents should choose it for them. But I don't think that any child should just be forced into doing something because it's what historically kids that look like them have done. That's just, it's wild and it's so limiting to a child. Um, but yeah, I think that the best course would be to give the child as many different types of experiences as possible, so that they can decide for themselves what they like, or the teachers and parents can see where the child shows particular skill.
I would love to see the school curriculum shift a little bit in regards to exposing children to more, but also nurturing children that excel in certain things. Because oftentimes, especially in lower income areas, right, the parents are constantly working to be able to sustain the household, right? So they're depending on the school to help them create a child or mold that child into the best version of themselves. And they may not have the opportunity to see it. But since the teacher is there and they see a child, they're so quick to hone in on the negative, right? A child that might not pay attention as much, or, you know, maybe they're the class clown because they don't have nobody to talk to when they go, a multitude of things, right? If they just gave them a little bit more push, a little bit more nurture in that area, we would see a change in society. So I love that you just said, like, giving them the opportunity first to just be exposed to things, but then also nurturing. That would be dope to see, and I hope that I get to experience it in my lifetime.
Yeah, you too.
So we're gonna jump into these rapid wrap up questions, okay? So I'm gonna ask and you answer, and then I'm gonna just jump to the next one. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So you talked about music. Would you rather take the lead or sing background?
Take the lead.
Take the lead, she a leader. If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Jamaica.
Jamaica, Jamaica. You showed your nails, okay? So we need to know, what is your preferred nail style? Coffin, pointy, square, etc.
Yeah, pointy stiletto.
Stilettos, pumps in the club. Would you rather be in a room full of strangers with mask on, or a room full of people you know with no mask at all?
Room full of strangers with masks on.
She says she not playing with y'all. Mask up. And last, but possibly most importantly, what are your top 3 songs if you need to get in the zone? You're just chilling. You got to get creative.
Ooh, top 3?
Top three, top three, top three.
Okay, top 3. That song "Smile," "Living My Best Life." That Beyonce's "EXO" and Cardi B's "Money."
Yes, I'm all here for it. And anything Beyonce is basically my love language. So that's just that. I want to allow you the opportunity to plug yourself in. If there's anything that you want to shout out or have people go see, to follow, this is your opportunity.
Well, it's just me here. Follow me at Candy Bling Baby Doll on Instagram, and yeah, that's it.
Okay, y'all. Well, y'all know how this goes. It's your girl, Carter Mia Lisa. Follow me at Carter Mia Lisa. Follow the pod at Length Pod. And until next time, y'all, peace.